Welcome to Chapter 3, and Chapter 3 is a very important in regards to how it relates to the pharmacy. And the title of Chapter 3 is Drug Regulation and Control. So by the end of this particular lecture, the following information, you should know the following information. You should have an understanding of the key legislative acts that governs the practice within the pharmacy. You should have an understanding of how the FDA go about approving new drugs in that particular process. You should also have an understanding of the process by which patents expire, making a drug eligible for release under a pharmaceutical or generic name, and what is the approval processes or procedures the manufacturer must go through. You should also be familiar with the different requirements for labels, product labeling for medication that are stock, for prescription containers, controlled substances, and over-the-counter drugs. You should be familiar with the different type of restrictions and different categories associated with over-the-counter drugs. You should have an understanding of the DEA number and how to go about checking it. Know when and how to fill out and process the DEA Form 222. We will go over that. Be aware of the key DNA forms when they are required, and also know the process of the FDA drug recall. So those are the learning objectives for Chapter 3, Drug Regulation and Control. So this began, as we have started the other chapters, by looking at thinking it through. Mike works as a pharmacy technician at a local community pharmacy. Some OTC drugs are behind the counter, including pseudoephedrine 30 millimeters, 30 milligrams tablets, Sudafed 30 milligram tablet, Claritin D 12 hour, Claritin D 24 hours, and Alivert 24 hours. The pharmacist has told Mike he can sell these products to patients, but he has to follow federal rules governing their sale. Susan, a 54-year-old regular customer, comes in and asks Mike if she can purchase two 100-count bottles of pseudoephedrine 30 milligrams tablets. As you read this chapter, keep in mind the following. 1. What is the maximum number of tablets Susan can purchase today? And 2. What is the maximum number of bottles of tablets Susan can purchase within a month? And so we will come back to this question later on in this lecture series involving Chapter 3. So what are some of the things that we will cover in this particular chapter? Drug regulation, new drug approval, marketed drugs, behind-the-counter medication, sample labels, controlled substances, additional DNA forms, public safety, law and the technician, ethics and compliance. And then I will refer you to the end of the chapter for your chapter review. So this particular slide here is just give you some highlights. I'm going to go into a little bit more details about each of these drug regulations. Okay, so there are many laws in the United States concerning the safety and effectiveness of food, drugs, medical devices, and cosmetics. And the reason why the government stepped in is to protect the customer, the consumer. During the 1800s or the 1900s, and even today, people would try to sell products that did not have any efficacy, that did not actually do what it said it is supposed to do. And so the government recognized that there needs to be a series of laws to allow this to occur. So regardless of whether a product is produced in the United States or imported, it must meet the requirements of law. The first major enactment of law in regards to the regulation of food and drugs and cosmetics occurred in 1906. This prohibits interstate commerce in adulterated or misbranded food, drink, or drugs, and government pre-approval of drugs was necessary. Other acts that need to be looked at is the 1940 Harrison Act, and this was in response to the addiction of opiates and cocaine containing medicine. So this act established that manufacturers, pharmacists, importers, and physicians prescribing narcotics should be licensed, and a tax was placed upon them. In 1927, there was the Food, Drug, and Insecticide Administration, and this came to be known today as the Food and Drug Administration in 1930. Okay. The one that you should know I have here and highlighted. Others are basically FYI or for your information. In 1938, there was the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic or FDC Act, and this was in response to a fatal poisoning of over 100 people, especially children, of untested sulfonamide concoction. And so this required that a drug be shown to be safe beforehand. And this is what you should know. In 1950, a major case called Alberti Food Products versus the United States. And this is a ruling that was made that drugs that is to be used must include a label. In 1951, we have the Durham-Humphrey Amendment, and this defines the drugs required a prescription by a licensed practitioner and required them to include a legend. And basically, when we talk about a legend, it is giving the consumer some background information relating to the drug. In 1962, you have the Kenver-Harris Amendment. This required drug manufacturers to provide proof of the safety and effectiveness of the marketing of a particular drug. In 1965, you have the Social Security Act. Very important because this is law for the care of the elderly. In 1966, you have the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act, requiring the consumer products in interstate commerce to be honest and informatively labeled. 1970, you had the Poison Prevention Packaging Act, and this is to respond to the amount of children that was being poisoned by the medication that was taken by adults in the environment. This led to the type of container that you see today, in which you have to, in essence, push down and turn to open. And a child, most children under the age of 5, cannot open that particular type of container. In 1970, again, we had the Controlled Substances Act, and those again highlighted on this particular web page. You should make a note of, and you can see it again as part of a quiz exam or even on your licensure exam for pharmacy technician. So the Controlled Substances Act stated that there are 5 different levels of controlled substance that have a potential for abuse, and therefore they are regulated accordingly. And then also this is an establishment of the Drug Enforcement Administration. And this particular department is under the Justice Department. In 1976, we had the Medical Device Amendment. This required pre-market approval that any type of medical devices must also show that they are life-sustaining and life-supporting. In 1983, you had the Orphan Drug Act, and this provides incentive to promote research, approval, and marketing of drugs to treat rare diseases. Usually, this is associated with diseases that affect less than 200,000 people in the United States, many rare genetic diseases, and there is basically a fast tracking of those particular drugs through the drug approval process monitored by the Food and Drug Administration. In 1984, you had the Drug Price Competition and Patient Term Restoration Act, or Hatch-Waxman. This allows for both the extension of the drug patent term and quicker introduction of low-cost generics. A lot of times, we talked about the patent protection. There's about 20 years for a particular drug. Once a drug becomes off patent, other manufacturers can make that same drug, usually at a lower cost. 1987, the Prescription Drug Marketing Act restricts distribution of prescription drugs, and it must be done through legitimate channels such as the pharmacy. The 1990 Omnibus Act, OBRA, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. So this gave pharmacists an expanded role that they could now counsel Medicaid patients regarding their medication. In 2003, you have the Medicare Modernization Act, and this is the creation of the Part D that again helped senior citizens be able to purchase prescription drugs and their medication under MTM. We talked about MTM regarding to medical therapy management, of which the pharmacist is part. You have the 2005 Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act, and we talked about how pseudoephedrine and ephedrine and phenylphenolamine, but mostly the ephedrine-based drugs, they are now placed in the back. So even though they're over the counter, in the scenario that we talked about at the beginning in relationship to Alivert, Catherine, those particular drugs have ephedrine in it, and for a patient to use those particular medicine, they must work with a pharmacist and get the medicine from behind the counter. And then here we have what's called the 2010 Patient Protection and Affordability Act, or what is known as Obamacare. And it has allowed for millions of individuals to get health care who otherwise would not have had health care. You cannot be denied coverage because of precondition that you may have, and that used to be a case. For example, if a person had a genetic disease, and many insurance will reject that particular person. We also increase the age of when a person could be under the parent's insurance to 26, and that has been very helpful to many young millennials, as they are called, that they can stay under their parents' health insurance until that particular